Hey guys, Steve with Fly Drones. We got another video coming at you here. I felt the need to do a new video that basically encapsulated everything to modifying your Mavic. There have been changes with the tools, the environment stuff. So we're going to show you how to roll back from the latest firmware, the 300, and then modify flight parameters. For other people that have a Mavic, this can work on other aircraft as well. If you've got an Air or Advanced or a P4, you're going to have limited mods. And again, the other reason I'm going to roll back here is to unlock the height and the NFC. If you don't want those, you don't need to roll back. Use this information at your own risk. Be cautious. Do it smartly, guys. Don't be dumb. A couple call outs. If you have a Platinum, Arctic White, you need an internal SD card installed. You need to pop the shell. Or if you've got a newer Mavic Pro, after the September 15th of 2017, you're going to need to install that as well. You can go to tools.retroroms.info and look up your serial number. So let's take a look at the situation. So if you're on the latest version of the firmware, and this is again on the Mavic, the 104.0300, either you've updated or you're at this version, you either lost your mods or you want to go back and you want to get some mods, you're going to quickly find out that this version is limited on two of the more popular ones, which is the height limit removal as well as the flight area restriction removal. So if I open up Assistant here, you'll see here that these two values for the height and the flight area restriction, they're gone. So we can't modify those on the new version. We can still do some of the other things, but those are gone. So we're going to show you how to do this. We're going to download Dumbledore. We're going to download some firmware, get an older version of Assistant. All of the download links are going to be in the comments. So we're going to start out with Dumbledore version 3. So again, the link is going to be in the comments. We're basically going to pull up Chrome, whatever your web browser of choice is, and then go to the Dumbledore GitHub site. Go ahead and click on the Releases tab. Go ahead and click Dumbledore v3.zip. We're going to download that file. Again, this video is going to be specific to PC. We're going to have another one come out here for Mac soon. Go ahead and extract those files out to your desktop or wherever a folder is that you choose. I'm going to dump it on the desktop here. You should see it in the top left-hand corner. Next, we're going to go ahead and download the Dank Downloader tool. This tool is pretty dank. Go ahead and open up the GitHub. Click on the executable there, the dankdownloader.exe. Click download or view raw. You want to download that executable. I'm going to drag mine to the desktop just so it's much easier. Then we're going to go ahead and download the DJI Assistant version 1.1.2. This is the last version that allowed us to do the modifications within the Assistant. The download link is going to be in the comments. My website, flyflydrones.com, is going to have it there as well. I'm just going to use that really quick. Okay, we're going to go ahead and leave that be. Go ahead and open the Dank Downloader tool. It might take a couple seconds to load. I sped it up here. After you're done there, for the model in the drop-down list up there, go ahead and choose the Mavic Pro or whatever your specific aircraft is. If you're using a different one, go ahead and pick the 103.0700. And then click the download button on the left over there. This tool actually should download things pretty fast. This video here is in real time over my Wi-Fi. It actually went really, really quick. Was very impressed with the tool. This tool is made by a really good guy. Definitely, I recommend you donate to him. It's just a sweet tool. It downloads every firmware for every DJI aircraft. So once it's done downloading, pick a location. I'm going to pick the same folder that I put Dumbledore. Just makes it super easy. Then go ahead and close this. Okay, now we're ready to check out the tool. Keep Assistant closed, power on your Mavic and plug it into the computer, and then go ahead and open up the Dumbledore v3.exe file. It should be in that folder that we extracted it to. If Windows asks you if you want to open the file, go ahead and say yes. Just a note there that if you see that serial port is not open message, you need to close Assistant or you opened Dumbledore too soon. Mavic wasn't fully powered on. Just go ahead and close it, reopen that tool, go to query, and then you'll see some buttons show up here. We're going to go ahead and take off the props, take off the gimbal lock, take off the gimbal cover, make sure you have a fully charged battery, and we're going to leave the remote off the whole time. Please note, if you're going from a newer version down to the moddable version, you're going to need to flash 2 times. A lot of times I see it'll hang at 82%, so don't worry, we'll get you through that. So it's pretty easy. Go ahead and load the firmware. Go ahead and load up that 103.0700 firmware that you downloaded using the Dank Downloader tool, and then hit flash firmware. Now the firmware process goes in a couple steps. First is what we call the anti-rollback step. This actually has 2 stages. What this does is it copies over a file. It fakes a update command, and it does a couple cool things that allows the aircraft to be put into a state where the software, I don't want to say has been compromised, but it's been defeated. It's broken, you know, part of the tech that's in there, and so we're able to roll back. Unfortunately, DJI, I think in the 104.0000 update, they put in what's called anti-rollback tech. And so basically they limited our ability or our tools to be able to roll back the firmware, and especially anything outside of the DJI Assistant. They removed all kinds of firmware versions, and so really they're limiting choice in their consumers. And so the community was really great. Gentleman, J Case, he came up with a solution, and that's one of the methods that's being used here very frequently. So you can see here the stage 1 of 2 just finished. It moves on then to stage 2. Usually it goes pretty quick. This video here is in real time so that you can kind of see exactly how much time it's going to take. I think start to finish, mine took maybe 1.5 minutes, 2 minutes for this to finish, so not too bad. Once that part is done, you'll see transferring to device. This is it copying the firmware file over to the aircraft. And so it's got to copy the firmware file over. Firmware file is about 100 megabytes in size, so that can take a couple minutes. I do find on computers that have the USB 3 port, it'll go a little bit faster. If you have an older computer, it could take a little bit longer. But that's going to transfer that file over. Now, once the file transfer has been completed, it's basically going to initiate the update command. One of the really nice things about this new version of the Dumbledore tool is we don't need Assistant whatsoever. It used to be that we would open Assistant, we would then close it, we would open Dumbledore, we would flash, we would close it, then go back to Assistant. This does all of it for us. It connects, it flashes, it reads the version, so we really don't need it until we actually modify the parameters. So, okay, so it's done transferring all of the file over to the device, and you can see here that now it says reflashing in progress, do not power off. So that's a very important thing, don't power off at this point. I went ahead and sped this part of the video up about 2,500 times. It's going to take about 8 to 12 minutes is what I average. And so just give it some time, be patient. Again, don't turn the aircraft off, don't close the tool, just let it do its thing. It'll keep progressing. Sometimes it'll appear as though it's hung. Most of the time, it's just working through things. But what I do see from time to time is when it hits 82%, it will hang. And so in my case, it got to 82% and it hung for about 5-10 minutes. All the LEDs had turned off and everything looked like it was basically done. So I decided to do what I call the RC test. Here's my phone. You can see here I've got Dumbledore. It's at 82%. I've got the thing set there, just updating. I'm going to go ahead and just turn on my remote control. No tablet, no device. I'm just going to turn on the remote control. And what we're doing here is we're testing the aircraft's ability to connect. If the firmware update is done, then the remote can connect fine. We'll get GPS, no problem. If the aircraft update is not done, the remote can't connect. It won't be in a state where it can connect. And so what this does is it verifies if the firmware is done or not. And so in my case, again, it hung at 82%. I want to verify if that process was done and it just didn't show in the tool or not. So you can see here, my remote finally connected. I've got GPS mode, although it's stuck at 82%. Again, if it doesn't connect, do not power things off. But because it did connect, I feel pretty comfortable that the update's done. It just doesn't reflect it in the tool. Again, I see this from time to time. Then I'm going to go ahead and turn off the Mavic, power it back on. I'm going to close Dumbledore, reopen it, and then I should be able to get things connected again. Now, once that's done, we're going to go ahead and we're going to look at that firmware version down there. Because that prior one didn't finish, it was still at 104.0300. I'm going to go ahead and flash that second time. Again, earlier I mentioned we were going to flash 2 times. This is that second time. This one should go a lot faster. It just kind of fills in the gaps of what the other one didn't update. So you actually notice that it goes a lot faster. For the video here, I went ahead and I sped it up by, it looks like it's 3,000 times. So you just kind of go through that. Once it's done, if you close Dumbledore, reopen again, it'll read the version. Then you should see the right version at the bottom. So you should be good to go. So the next step then is to then set up DJI Assistant. We downloaded that earlier, so we're going to go ahead and find it and install it. If you've got an older version, sorry, a newer version of DJI Assistant installed, go ahead and remove that through Add Remove Programs. We want this to be probably the only version that we have on here. If you don't want to uninstall the newer version, just go to the program files and just rename the folder. This will allow this one to install basically in its place. You can have the two side by side if you need them. They'll still work just fine. So here's the installer for DJI Assistant. Go ahead and click I accept the agreement on the EULA there. Oh, there we go. Go ahead and click I accept the agreement. Go ahead and click next, click install. If you want the desktop icon, the shortcuts, that's fine. At a certain point, it's going to get to a point where it brings up like a DOS window, a command line, and it's going to want to install device drivers. If you get any prompts or any alerts from Windows, choose yes, I want to install those device drivers. Sometimes I see they're actually going to be in Chinese. Just click yes, install, and that'll make sure that all the device drivers go in place. This is the device drivers right here. And that'll make sure that it works the best. Go ahead and uncheck that box. We don't want to actually open Assistant yet. We're going to open up a file explorer, and we're going to go to the program files folder, and then within that there's a folder called DJI product. Within that there's a folder titled Assistant 2, and then an app files folder. We're going to basically open all of those, and then we'll see a file called main or main.js. We're going to edit that file, and we're going to look for this command. You're basically going to delete those two slashes off of the very beginning of that line where it says / main window .webcontents.opendevtools. And so basically that's just commenting that line out. We're going to delete those two slashes by editing that file. In my case, I'm going to go ahead and just navigate here. I'm going to edit it using a program called Notepad++. The regular Notepad, WordPad probably won't work, so make sure that you use like Notepad++. It will ask for administrator privileges at one point, so it's important to use the right tool. So here we go. We navigated, found the file, main.js. We're going to scroll down here on line, 113. It says main window, web contents, open DevTools. We're just going to delete those two slashes. Once that's done, again, we're just going to leave the rest of the line. Go ahead and choose to save the file. It'll ask if you want to reopen it in administrator mode and make the change. Go ahead and choose yes, save it again, and then close the file. If you don't do that, the next steps aren't going to work. And so make sure that you save that file properly. Okay, now when you open up Assistant, you're going to see a new section on the right side. What we're going to do is use that to open up a debug function where we can get into some advanced options within the DJI Assistant program. So open up Assistant. Up on the right there, click that little caret, go down to Resources. On the left, pick Local Storage. Go ahead and click on that file, and then on the right, you should see one in the list called Debug. Go ahead and double click in that line, change the 0 to the 1, and press Enter. Do not click away, make sure you press Enter. You can go ahead and close that little frame, and then click on the aircraft. You'll now notice that you got a whole lot more options on the left over there. If you kind of scroll down, you should see one called Parameters. That's the one that we want. So let me go ahead and open it again. I'll show you that one more time. Go ahead and click on Debug, change that to 1. Go ahead and close that little window, and then go and click on Mavic Pro or whatever your aircraft is. You don't need to log in at all for this. Go ahead and just scroll down, pick Parameters, and this is going to give us the ability to access all of the flight controller parameters. So this is really what we've been working for. It's going to show basically a little filter field where you can do a search. That's where you're going to want to search for and find all the different mods. And so what I do is I search through all of the parameters that I want to add. I click the plus sign next to them to add them as a favorite under the commonly used parameters. And then once I've gone through and I've added them all as favorites, I then edit them. Now, I feel pretty passionately about doing this in this order very particularly because you don't want to make edits, you don't want to make changes to, things that you're not sure about. There's a lot of things in here. There's a lot of things in here that look very, very similar, and so we want your aircraft to, to go the long haul, to be good for a long time. You don't want any screw ups in here, and so we're just going to go through right now. We're going to find all of the different parameters that we want to modify. We're just going to hit that plus sign over there on the right. We're going to add them basically to that list. You can kind of see them showing up here, and that's going to be your favorites. The cool thing about this is, as we're kind of going through this, you'll see that next to the value is an operation that says reset, And so if you ever change something and you want to go back to stock, it's super easy to do that. You can change each one of those by clicking the reset button. You'll notice on the top left up there as well, there's a button that says reset all. And so you can easily reset all of these back to stock. Why would you want to do that? Maybe you're playing around, you want to just go back to stock, kind of see what the difference is. Maybe you're doing warranty purposes and you need to reset things back. But it's a super easy way to do that. So I'm just finishing up here. We've basically added all of the different options to the list. This is everything. It's basically everything that you can do to it. It's faster, sport mode, GPS mode, obstacle mode, height limit removed, no flight limit removed, wind speeds removed, and basically everything. Here's a list just as a reference. I've got all these at flyflydrones.com. It's always updated. So this is what all the parameters are going to be. And so I'm not going to talk through all of these, too detailed, but I'm just going to kind of run through the list here. The first section are the sport mode options. So I changed the tilt value to 50. That makes it go a little bit faster. You can change the vertical ascent and descent. The next section is GPS. I'm just going to up those a little bit. Change the tilt to 33 degrees. Once we get past the GPS mode is the obstacle avoidance mode. I changed that from a 16-degree tilt up to 23. That still works. The sensors still work without any problems. Bump up the max speed. This one right here is the height limit. So we're going to go ahead and just change that. It bypasses the height limit. The next three are basically cases where you might not get GPS signal and it sets artificial limits. And so we're just going to set that up to 10K. It doesn't exist anymore. The next two are the flight area restriction. So the first one bypasses it. The second one basically makes sure that all the maps are future dated so that they won't expire. The next two we have here are the wind warnings. I set them at 25, which removes them entirely. You can set those lower and they'll be just less sensitive. And then the last one there is the go home speed. I set it to 13.7, so I can go home a little bit faster and go home by pushing forward. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to change my battery to non-DJI. If you go too high or you hit 10% or below, it goes into a forced landing state. So I'm going to go ahead and get rid of that. We do that by clicking on flight settings on the left here. Go ahead and click battery on the top. And then from the battery type, we just pick non-DJI battery. Go ahead and pick LED warning for the two types. Drop those voltages down as far as they'll go. And then basically click away from here. Or if you click this window, you're done. So you're flash modded, you can fly. I do recommend doing compass and eye view calibrations. You don't have to, but it's a good idea since we've gone around a couple firmware versions. Be safe while you fly. I give this information out, but I want people to be safe. So let's talk a little bit about using the latest firmware version then. If you want to use the latest firmware version, we got to download a custom one using the Dank downloader tool. What this does is it gives you the ability to run the mods plus all the new features. So load up the Dank downloader tool, go ahead and pick the custom rolled firmware, go down there to the 104.100, go ahead and download this. Again, what this is going to do is it's going to preserve the mods that we have in place, all of the speed mods, the height limit, blah, blah, blah. And it's going to give us the ability to load a newer version, newer firmware, which we actually went away from. But it's going to be excluding a couple things within that firmware that allow us to keep the mods. And so I want to talk to you a little bit and actually go into that and not just say, hey, you're going to do this, but let's understand why we're doing this. And so what's custom about it? Why are we doing this? Why are we loading this on top? So it's the newest firmware, but what we do is we remove 3 modules. There's basically 2 flight controller modules that allow us to modify the parameters. And then there's another one, which is the flight area restriction database file. And so what I want to do is I want to open up the firmware file here and just look at the file so you guys can get an idea of what we're removing, what's different in that custom firmware file. So if you look at that file, it's got a whole lot of different modules. It was missing 3 in particular, the 305, the 306, and the 905 modules. If I open this one here, this was the 700 firmware, you can see it's got the 305, the 306, and the 905. And so those are the modules, again, the 305 and 306, that allow us to do the mods. The 905 is the flight area restriction. And so the new version, those have been removed. And so they stay intact, but we still get the ability to run the new features, the new gestures, quick shots, and panorama and things. So let's go ahead and power the aircraft back on, plug it back on, and let's go ahead and open up the Dumbledore tool. Again, we're going to be able to preserve all the mods. You are going to need a version of DJI Go that's still going to work though. I think 4.1.8 is going to be the best one. So Go back to the Dumbledore tool from the file name, go ahead and put in an asterisk, and then hit enter, and it should show all the files, just in case it doesn't show the one that you downloaded. And then pick that 104.0.100 and click OK, and then click Flash Firmware. This is going to do just a regular flash, just like we did earlier. Usually this is going to work the first try. I have run into cases where you're going to need a second firmware update. In the case of when I did it for the video here, I did need to do a second firmware update as well. And so go ahead and do it the first time. I went ahead and sped it up here. You can see that it actually finished at 58%, and then it hit boom, done. And so I know that that's not quite right. So I'm going to just close Dumbledore. I'm going to open Dumbledore again, and I'm going to verify the version. It's probably going to still be at the 0700, which we absolutely wanted before, but now we're trying to upgrade. And so I'm going to go ahead and flash again. So go ahead and open up the tool again, do the same thing, put an asterisk in when you open the firmware, and then go ahead and hit Flash Firmware. It'll go ahead and start the flash again. In this case, for the video, I sped it up 3,000 times. But it'll do the flash again. This one will probably take just a little bit longer, but again, it's going to update all the modules the prior one didn't get. I call it the two-step DJI shuffle, but the 2 firmware updates will get things loaded and updated. So in this case, I went ahead and opened up Dumbledore. Everything showed the proper version, and so I think we're good to go. Should be on the 104.0.100 in a modded format. So go ahead and open up Assistant, and if you enable the debug again and then open up parameters, we can verify that all of our mods are in fact still in place, and things actually look really good. So everything's still in place. All the mods are preserved. The one note though is that if you wanted to do your battery, you're going to need to do that again. I probably should have skipped that step earlier in the video, but hey, it just doesn't work out like that. So you can mod the battery again, go to Flight Settings, Battery, change all those to LED warning, non-DJI battery, and that's it. At this point, go ahead and close Assistant, unplug from the PC and power off, and you've got basically everything done. You can visit over us at Facebook and the DJI Modding Lounge, and also go chat with the OGs in Slack. They're a great group of guys. I very much appreciate you watching our video. Hopefully this was informative. Give us some thoughts and comments. Thanks, guys. Cheers.